Hey, good evening. Welcome to a foreigner in the Philippines. Well, with so much to and froing, right and wrong, true or false, and all of those familiar words which we're hearing all the time nowadays because of the situation that the world seems to be in, I went back to the good old-fashioned way of looking words up in the dictionary. So, if you're going to watch this, and you've got a pen and a paper, take down a couple of words which are being bandied about and are not being defined or explained. So I looked them up for you. Now these are words which we're hearing about, and we're really not understanding exactly what the word means. But the people who are bandying these words about as if they're not important, they very much know exactly what the words mean. So here's the first page of the dictionary that I opened, was eugenics. Now eugenics, let me read to you. I copied down verbatim what the definition was. Eugenics, the practice or advocacy of controlled selective breeding of human populations. And then in brackets it says, as by sterilization. So that's very important, that. Now, to improve the population's genetic composition. Now, if you want to find out what's been happening with regard to eugenics, you can check out what Mr. Gates has been doing in India and in Africa. And if you look on YouTube, which we would hope that they haven't gotten rid of these videos, because they are, mind you, even if they got rid of them, they are still there, because when they created YouTube and Facebook and all of these things, they may think that they're totally in control, but actually they're not. If you somebody made fun of me the other day because instead of putting quarantine into my Facebook, I wrote it as warantine, and of course it wasn't a spelling mistake. It was a crude way of getting over the point of that word, which can have a post deleted. You can have a post deleted if it's got these words in. So if it does get caught by their artificial intelligence, then it will be deleted. So eugenics, so the practice of controlled selective breeding. Now the most popular one, when I say popular, the most common known one, eugenics has been around for a long time, and it's been practiced by a lot of different groups or governments. And the most well-known one, of course, was old Adolf. And what Adolf did, he wanted everybody, I think a loose definition would be that he wanted everybody with blonde hair and blue eyes and fair skin, and that was the whole idea. And I don't know how many people would know this, but there are people alive now living normal lives who were produced, if that's the word, under the eugenics program during the Second World War by old Adolf. And what he did was he got a farm load of women who measured up into within that certain parameter with the various requirements of blonde, blue eyes, and so on. And I'm sure that they had a lot of other requirements which would make them part of that program. And they were bred like animals, with tall, blonde, blue-eyed German soldiers or otherwise. And the results of those are children which are actually alive and well and grown now. And there are programs, documentaries that deal with some of these people and seeing how things have turned out. Well, that was the most common one. Now, right now, I've actually seen during the pandemics, which I still cannot help but call pandemic, and I've seen that it's being thought best not to revive, and people always tell me about what they know on nurses who are working hard within the pandemic and validating the pandemic as being true and real. So it's reasonable to quote the nurses that I've seen that say that doctors quietly, unofficially, out of the side of their mouth say, do not revive. And they have a little word for that, a little phrase which they use, and they do not revive people who are less perfect than the rest of us, less perfect than you and me, of course. Right, so that is what is happening right now. So eugenics, so that is very much the declared interest and passion of himself, Uncle Billy. Once again, I have to use code. What's the other word that if you go on and look at the TED, watch the TED videos, TED feature Uncle Billy and his lady in talks on there which he is quite open about what he wants to do, and he wants to reduce the population. So let's have a look at the word depopulation. It's not a nice word. Depopulation. To reduce greatly, I'm reading this from Webster's dictionary. To reduce greatly the population, the populations. That's it. Well, Uncle Billy says that he plans to do this, that this is entirely possible to be done through health care, which would be something of a contradiction, wouldn't it? Health care and through vaccines. So I was thinking that the vaccines were supposed to be saving lives, but here we are talking about vaccines in relation, and look it up. I'm giving you the references, you can go to. If you don't agree with my idea of eugenics, it's not my idea, it's in the dictionary, which you can go and check up. This takes away the idea of so-called conspiracy theories, because himself, he is out there saying this stuff. And if you really want to know how that's been going, as I say, look up Mr. G in India and see what was happening there, where they actually asked him to leave, and it ended in tears. Of course, Mr. G wasn't there himself, but his helpers and the people that are doing his bidding were there, and they were going around villages. Once again, look it up for yourself. There's no point in going on and saying, well, if you believe that, you'll believe anything. Look it up yourself. Isn't it worth looking up and finding out for yourself what's been written about this, and then judge on the writing and the reports and the validity of the sources for yourself? But thousands of young girls, coming up into age of young women, were persuaded to have vaccines there that contained one of the ingredients that's prominent in sterilization. So look that up. A lot of this stuff went terribly wrong, and a lot of children were paralyzed. Look it up. So depopulation. How are we going to do depopulation? Of course, Mr. G won't be part of this depopulation. He wants, I believe, the population of the world cut down by something like a third. So have a look, and it's not good news. Now, one of the ways that they're going to be able to make things so that they're controllable is they're going to make the use of what I call nanorobots. Now, if you've never heard of a nanorobot, listen to what the dictionary says about nanorobots. Nanorobots, microscopically small robot built on the size and the scale of nanometers. That's the size of a blood cell. That's a little tiny robot. These robots the size of blood cells that travel through the capillaries of one's brains, listen, into the brains, and communicate with biological neurons. Now, imagine what they can do if and they're talking about this with artificial intelligence. If you've ever looked on YouTube and put in there intelligent robots, have a look on there, and they've built them in the shape of like Star Wars. They built them to look like you and me, and they've got them to the point where if they were left to work, they could introduce an item into their makeup where they could reinvent themselves. So, artificial intelligence is already ruling a huge area of our lives. How do you think, you don't think that Mr. Scumberger is looking through Facebook to find out for himself, do you? No, and he hasn't got multi-millions of people that can do it. He has artificial intelligence and computerized robotic intelligences which can look through and find out if I'm saying the right or the wrong words. So, it's already happening. It's already happening. So, imagine if that is going to be a situation. Now, Mr. G is on, and have a look, is on TED, and he's talking about the use of nanorobots. However he puts it, that's what he's talking about, because he's talking about being able to give someone an injection, and of course it's not going to be you and me, all the reasonable people. It's going to be these people who are complete crazies and going and doing things like suicide bombings, and they're doing, as Mr. G says, they're doing these on the basis of a fanatical interest or dedication to religion. So, when someone goes and does a suicide bombing, where does he get his reward? Everybody needs a reward, and these people are promised a reward of, isn't it 70 virgins? As if that's what you would want to be doing with 70 anything if you go to heaven. But anyway, there's a way to appeal to somebody that's on earth that is not anything to do with the kind of concept that most of us have about heaven. So he's talking about the use of these nanorobots to be able to target, going back to the definition. Remember the definition. Robots the size of blood cells that travel through the capillaries of the brain. Now, and they communicate with biological neurons. So, these tiny nanorobots, and this is not, that definition is not what is proposed for the future. These things are here now. So, we're not talking about conspiracy, we're not talking about science fiction, we're talking about something that is in the now. And they can go in and they can, this is what's being proposed with the RNA. I believe that's the definition. It might be mRNA. I'm not quite sure. I haven't got that reference in front of me, but it's there for you to check. The RNA vaccines are not vaccines. A vaccine is there to take and produce an antibody which will fight the disease if it ever comes in, and that's the loosest. I haven't got the word vaccine defined for you according to the dictionary, but the RNA are not vaccines because they are control systems which will go in and going again on the idea of the nanorobots. Robots the size of blood cells that can travel through the capillaries of our brains and communicate. So Uncle Billy is there, and he is saying that we, of course we're on the side of everything that's being done to everybody else, you and me and Billy, and we could change the behavior of someone. Well, I'm looking at all of the governmental controls that come in, and it always works in our favour, doesn't it? Yes, I'm sure, but it doesn't. And what happens if it's not done right? What happens if it's not ethical? What happens if it's not true? What happens if it's not in our favour? Mr. G is not taking any of these vaccines himself, and as someone pointed out to me today, no one has ever seen Mr. G wear a face mask, and he's not taking the videos himself. And do you think that his kids are? I don't think so. So how can all of this be used to produce a world where things will be much more controllable for the elite? Everybody is aware that 98% of the wealth is not owned by the 2%. The 2%, I put that very badly, 2% of the wealth is owned, or 98% of the wealth is owned by 2% of the population. Right, so it's a very, very few who have got billions of dollars. Now, if you just think about this for a moment. Mr. Gutenberg from Facebook, he lost on stock value, lost over 30 or either 30 or 40 billion dollars, and said, oh well, just shrugged. Like you and me, maybe losing a $5 bet. Oh, it's just $5. What's the current impulse buy is around $30. If you look through something and on eBay or online and it says $30, you'll put that on your credit card and not worry about whether it's not perfect when it gets there. So they're actually going to put this into operation. Do you think they will? They are. It's happening now. It's happening now. Even now, airlines are saying, and I must end off on this because I'm already into too much time anyway, but airlines are already saying that they will not let anyone fly. These are not government bodies, these are private companies. Our lives are being controlled by private companies. Facebook is a private company. Twitter, anything that you say is under the control of private companies. Even the President of the United States was censored by a private company. Or more, 2 or 3, wasn't he? So, is it a conspiracy? I don't think so. It's happening now. And if all that you can do to find out what is happening is look through a few words in the dictionary. Look these words up in the dictionary for yourself, and then you will know what is planned. My mother always used to have a few sage words. I always thought of her as a common lady, and she was. Very little education. But if she saw a struggle that was going nowhere, or in favour of one rather than the other, she would always stop the argument between me and my brother and say, "Stop it right now. It will end in tears. And the way that we're going right now, it will end in tears." We're too late, I think, to actually save the day. We're not too late to change it ultimately. I do think that divine intervention will come to our aid eventually, but we're going to serve some heavy time. We're going to pay some dues. Get ready for it. Bye for now.